Well, hello there, kiddies! Retro Dad! It's been a long journey over the last couple years at So Wrong's Retro Collecting to get a complete licensed set for the NES. Now, that wasn't always the goal. Originally, I just wanted to get a couple games here and there, maybe a couple hundred. And then I realized that I got this far, I might as well go for a complete licensed set. Now, even back in 2012, when I decided to make the transition of going for a complete licensed set, I always had a couple games I really wanted to get off that list. Little Samson, Panic Restaurant, Bonks Adventure, Gun Knack, just to name a few. Well, I got a huge one off the list. What's that? What is it you want to know? We'll find out after this. I took a little trip to Retro Game Trader with a box of trade-ins. I decided if I wanted to get that licensed set, I might have to sacrifice. I can always get games again when I trade it in. But I got rid of things I never thought I'd ever get rid of. I got rid of my Diablo for PlayStation 1, my Marvel vs. Capcom, Run Saber, Imperium, all three Donkey Kong countries, and many, many more to do this sacrifice. I know they had a copy, and I really wanted it. But I got Bonks Adventure for the NES. So beautiful, I got Bonks Adventure. So I got one of my top 3 games off the list, Bonks Adventure. There also is a Bonks Adventure for the TurboGrafx 16, and a Bonks Adventure for the Game Boy. We're going to look at all 3 games and compare them to each other. We're going to talk about A Tale of 3 Bonks. Bonks Adventure is a 2D platformer. It was released on the PC Engine in 1989, the Japanese equivalent to the TurboGrafx 16. It was released in the US about a year later. The NES version came out in '94, late in the NES lifespan, making the game rare, hard to find, and costly. Bonk made his debut on Nintendo's handheld system, the Game Boy, in 1992, 2 years earlier than the NES. Of course, the original came out on the TurboGrafx 16. One thing you notice right away is the vibrant colors. It looks amazing. This is a great platformer for the TurboGrafx 16. This is one game I highly recommend to get for that system. It is a must-have. The NES is a port of Bonks Adventure for the TurboGrafx 16, but it's NES-ified. Bonks looks a little chunkier, he doesn't look as crisp, but everything else looks pretty much in place. Now, compare it to the Game Boy version. It's not going to have the vibrant colors because it is original Game Boy game, but it's still very playable, excellent game to get for the original Game Boy. What is the premise? Each version is the same. In Bonks Adventure, you play the cave dude Bonk, trying to help out Princess Ah, helping her out by rescuing. Typical 80s, 90s storyline. Bonks has a thick head and he headbutts things all the time. Bonk attacks by hitting enemies with his overlarge head. Most guys you can hit once, some of them gotta hit twice. Those red-looking half Bonk, half Dino. I don't know what your mother's or father have been doing, Bonk, but I'm really concerned. Those guys take a lot of hits. Or you can just keep hitting them and bouncing them up in the air. Throughout the 3 variations of Adventures of the Cave Dude Bonk, when you attack enemies, you get these little smiley faces. Sometimes they're just sitting around in levels. Collect them. At the end of the stage, they can refill any damage taken and possibly give you an extra life, if you collected enough of them. Now you hit these flowers, and some of the flowers will either give you fruit, sometimes they'll give you meat, and sometimes they turn into a monster that you have to hit really fast or chase around. You can use flowers as springboards and jump to new heights. Hearts equal Bonk's health bar. The NES version just looks off. I'm not sure if they're supposed to be hearts. I think they are. The Game Boy's spot on, old-fashioned cartoon hearts. When you take damage, a little bit of your heart is taken away. There are different types of hearts. Clear or blue ones will give you a bigger life bar, an extra heart. Small red hearts will replenish a piece of your life bar. A big red heart can fill up the entire life bar. Now, one thing about Bonks, that guy's incredibly hungry. So if you find fruit and vegetables, keep feeding him. You get points and also help you replenish your hearts. Speaking of hearts, you only start out with so many hearts, but you can get extra ones throughout the levels. Bonks' dental bills must be sky high because he uses chompers to climb up walls. What other hero uses teeth to scale up walls? No one. Bonk is the original. For the NES and the Game Boy, it's so much easier to climb up the walls. TurboGrafx 16, I have a little more difficulty, seems to be a little slower climbing up the walls. You can get a glide up occasionally, but it happens much easier in the Game Boy or NES version. Maybe I'm just not doing it right. Power-ups. All Bonks games have a similar theme. When Bonks gets meat, oh man, he goes crazy and he becomes bonkified and he goes around hitting everyone in his way, or he can slam the ground, freezing everyone. When you become Super Bonk, you are invincible. You can plow through enemies. This only works if he has the big meat. Little ones increase Bonk's power though. Adding them up can create Bonkified or Super Bonk. The effect of meat, just like in real life, is just temporary. The Bee-Man's Adventure on the Game Boy has an extra power-up in one of the underwater stages. Bonk can transform into a turtle. You will find a floating turtle near the mechanized plesiosaur submarine. Come in contact with it and transform into a turtle. The graphics are better on the TurboGrafx 16. The animation overall in the TurboGrafx 16 shines. It's a little bit more colorful. Bonk's Adventure on the NES is a little duller. On the Game Boy, you can't really say much, but it looks great on the Game Boy. If it was in color, it'd probably match up closer to the NES. In this part of the level, you hit him on the head, he opens up, and you go into his stomach, and there's a whole other level inside him. That's one of the weirdest things I've ever had to say. Just look at the two. It really shines on the TurboGrafx, just the animation. And remember, that's pretty much an 8-bit system, just like the NES. But you could tell Bonk's Adventure was made for the TurboGrafx. You can see the similarities kind of dissipate in the way they do their bonus levels. Now, you'll find bonus levels throughout each 3 of the games. Some of them are set in the same spots, especially when it comes to the TurboGrafx 16 and the NES counterpart. The Game Boy is not as much, and I believe to get the bonuses are a lot easier on the Game Boy and the NES. One of my favorite bonuses is the flip bonus in the NES and in the Game Boy. That's the one thing, the bonuses are very similar on the Nintendo versions, but there are a few unique bonuses that are only in the TurboGrafx 16. Yeah, here's a bonus level where you hit fireballs on top of your head. That bonus level does not appear in the NES or the Game Boy, or maybe I haven't found them. I played through these quite a bit. Now, I haven't been able to find all the bonus levels in Bonk's Adventure for the TurboGrafx 16. A lot of the enemies are very similar in all 3 games, and some enemies disappear. Here in the TurboGrafx version, there's pliosaurs in the underwater world, where in Bonk's Adventure for the NES, they're not there. The red abominations do appear in the NES as well. The closest sprite in the Game Boy is this guy. I'm not convinced it's the same creature. What port, either the NES or Game Boy, is closer to the TurboGrafx 16? The NES, definitely. One thing you'll notice is the layouts are very similar. There are a few levels that are slightly different compared to TurboGrafx 16 Bonks. But if you played one, you could play the other and you know where that secret extra guy is. The Game Boy take a little bit more liberties in their level, but the biggest liberties the Game Boy takes are the bosses. The bosses are completely different with the exception of King Drool. All the other bosses are unique to the Game Boy, with the exception of this one as well. Now this boss is incredibly easy, and it's easy to actually fight this boss without taking a single hit. All the bosses are pretty much the same between the NES and the TurboGrafx-16. You've got snot-blowing dinosaurs. You have boxing dinosaurs. Now the big difference between the TurboGrafx-16 and the NES version is the second level boss. Now the TurboGrafx-16, the boss splits into two forms, where the NES only has the one form, it vanishes over and over. Oh wait a minute, excuse me, that's a glitch. Yeah, my NES I had to glitch out on Bonks. Oh, here it is, and that looks a lot better. Each controller only has two buttons, so it's very easy to switch between them, and you can adapt very easily. So when you pick up Bonks Adventure for the TurboGrafx-16, you can easily pick it up for the NES or the Game Boy. The controls are fluid, they react to the buttons you push, it's very intuitive. I believe the hit detection is a little off in the Game Boy version sometimes, not always, but sometimes. Especially when it comes to the bird boss. I had a harder time hitting him than any other boss in all three games. Difficulty. Bonks Adventure, no matter which one you play, is not a difficult game. It's actually a very enjoyable game. I had the most difficulty on the bosses on the Game Boy for some reason. Maybe it's that hit detection I talked about earlier. Sound makes up half a movie and third for games. There's visuals, gameplay, and sound. Sound effects are perfect for each version. The music is catchy and upbeat. Stage themes are repeated in both the TurboGrafx-16 and the NES. Once again, the TurboGrafx-16 Bonk sounds much better. The Game Boy has a comparable soundtrack in parts to the other two. Well, what about length? Well, that goes to the TurboGrafx-16. It is about 20 minutes longer depending how you play. The reason why this happens is because of this level right here. The blocks will open up, and if you're not quick enough, you'll fall through. The NES does not have that level, so it's much quicker to go through it. Because you can get stuck for about 10 minutes if you're not careful. Plus you have that pterodactyl that always bothers you. But you can also find some secrets up there too, so watch out for that. Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, what about endings? You come face to face with Princess Zaw and her corrupted vehicle. You just gotta hit the antenna until he's defeated. And then it's revealed that all the inhabitants of Moonland were brainwashed by the evil, vile King Drool. What a bummer, dude! You take a rocket trip to the moon, you fight King Drool. Now the Game Boy, his pattern's more recognizable. He bounces around, vanishes, comes down, and tries to body slam you, I guess. You might find it more problematic to actually hit him in the TurboGrafx-16 when he's invisible. In the NES version, just keep hitting him in the head. The NES version is closer related to Bonks Adventure's TurboGrafx-16 than the Game Boy, except when it comes to the ending. The ending actually looks a lot more like the TurboGrafx-16 version than the NES. So it looks like Bonks Adventure for the Game Boy took elements of both games. No matter what, it's still Bonks Adventure. I love this little part for the NES. It does not have this for either TurboGrafx-16 or the Game Boy. Here he comes, here he comes. Ah, that's awesome. Come on, Bonk, you can get out of it. I mean, that's one thing about the Bonks Adventure games. There's a lot of humor in them, too. Sometimes it's kind of subtle. In my opinion, which is the better Bonks? Of course, it has to go to the original. Bonks Adventure is great. You must have to own if you already have a TurboGrafx. Simulating levels, outstanding controls, hitting dinos in the head, boss fights, interspecies romance. Both from the standpoint that she's a dino and an alien and Bonk is a big-headed cable. Whew. Just weird. And in general, just a fun platformer. Makes it a nearly perfect gaming package. I would actually say the Game Boy would be the second best Bonks. I prefer it a little bit over the NES version. Besides the extras like the turtle power-up, the unique levels and bosses make the Game Boy stand out even from the original release. Bonk on the Game Boy is fun, challenging at spots, and overall enjoyable to play. Plus, not to mention cheap. But I'm still happy I got that NES one, and that's a huge one off the list. No wonder the NES version of Bonk's Adventure is such a sought-after game. Yes, it's rare. Yes, it's costly. It comes from a port of a great game. Now, the NES version might not be great, but it's good. Very good. And very enjoyable. But that's a tale of 3 Bonks. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you for watching. Have fun. Go game. See you later. I got another one off the list recently. I got Mario's Time Machine as well.